I like it. Can reach back, draw an arrow, fire, retrieve my arrow. I think I'll use my index finger to keep their eye on where everything is. And they just go right back in. That's pretty nice. I like that. Today I'm going to make a pocket quiver. I saw one at a 3D shoot a while back and it really intrigued me, so I'm going to throw some Kydex together and see what happens. This is some carbon fiber scrap that I had laying around. I'm just going to press 2 pieces of it together, use these arrows as a form, and we'll go from there. So when you're pressing Kydex together, it always helps if you put an extra couple thousandths layer. This is just painter's tape, and I wrapped the arrow a few times. It's one width of tape and then wrapped around until it overlaps and it's even. So you lay your arrows out where you think you might want it. In this case, I roughly know that a pocket's about this wide, right? I'm not doing any of this exact, kind of just a trial run. So I'm going to overlap the feathers to where they are one fletching width apart on this end. And then I'll pinch these together. Maybe not quite that together. And it should create some nice channels. I'll try and make sure they're relatively the same depth. My video didn't work, so I'm going to have to recreate this a little bit. This is just a standard toaster oven. Put my scrap in. When you're dealing with carbon fiber, you'd want to put the strap away, the carbon away from the bars on the grate. You close it. I turn mine on full blast, and then every so often I check it with a heat gun and see the temperature. I'm not going to heat this one up because I've already done it. When it's 300 to 315 degrees, you remove this piece wearing gloves. Remember, it to be really flexible and pliable at this point, and then you take it over to where your press was. I've already completed this, but I'm going to show you the first steps with what would have been hot Kydex. So I have my arrows laid out the way that I want them to be laid out. In this case, it would be like this, and I would come in with my hot Kydex and lay it over the top of the arrows. At that point, I'd lay my foam press over the top of that, lay my 2x6 on top of that, clamp one side down, not fully, hold the press, put my second clamp on, then clamp it down. I'd wait about 5 minutes for this to cool, and then once I took it off, it would look like this. And now your hot Kydex is shaped to the shape of your arrows. I'm going to take a second scrap piece now and make a back for it. The first thing that I'm going to do is cut off the front piece, because when these two pieces are together, I want there to be a ledge. I want this one to be a little bit shorter than the back one, because I want it to be like this. When I put my arrows in, I want to have a guide to where my arrow hits a ledge and then goes in. Now that I've got my basic shape, I'm going to try and think about how I'm going to connect a separate piece for something that connects it to your pocket and kind of holds it in place a little bit. So I have two pieces, very rough cut, roughly the same size. You'll find out why these ugly pieces don't really matter here in the end. I put them together and I made a square corner on my sander. bend this a little past 90. Once that's cool, I'm going to unhook it. The reason that we went over a 90-degree angle on this is when you reach down, once this is in your pocket, it gives you something to grab to release the tension. This is going to be the basic setup. Here's one of these feet trimmed down so that the angle is good for retention. And I'll put it in the middle. The screws on the inside won't affect where the arrows go in because they're just enough space between the arrows. And this will fit right down here. I've got some extra sticking down because the more of it that's in the pocket, the better. Now that I've got the mock-up all done, it's time to start drilling holes and putting stuff together. After I drill the first hole, I put the first piece of hardware in place to hold it before I drill my next hole, and so on. After I drill all the holes, I put them all in, they fit right, and then I'll take them back out and I'll start my retention screws. Something to be mindful of is how much material can fit through your retention. You can see that's just about right for one layer of pants. So I drilled that first hole and I went ahead and put the Chicago screw in. I'll end up using some rubber spacers right here, which will help keep the screws from loosening. Interesting fact, the tooling for the first Luminoc that was ever made was made on this exact mill right here. I've got all my holes drilled, and I've got a couple pieces of gas line here that I just cut off. It's rubber, it'll act as a really nice gasket. So I'll just take and put this together. Now that I've got it put together, I'll test fit a few arrows and then I'll cut it to final size. That's a little bit too loose. I don't want arrows falling out, so I'm going to put in a retention device. What I've decided to do is use more of this rubber gasket and make these holes go all the way through, and I'll put a gasket in here, and as we put the screws tighter, it'll have a retention effect. I'll test fit an arrow again. See, that's too tight, and that's good. Out here on the end is just about right. that's mostly because of the rivets are there holding it in place. So I can loosen it now. And I like the retention now. I've done some adjustments. Not bad for a first gen so far, so I'll cut it to size. Here it is. I put it together kind of impromptu this morning. I found out there was a 3D shoot today, so I wanted to put it together this morning so I could try it out this afternoon. I shaved up all the corners and made those nice and smooth with a sisal wheel, and I think it's going to work out really nice. Maybe I'll have to make some adjustments the next one I make. It's really easy to put on and off. As long as your shirt doesn't get in the way, I guess. It's stable. It's stable too. I mean, they're arrows, they'll flop around, but they're not going to bother me at all. I like it. I can reach back, draw an arrow, fire, retrieve my arrow. I think I'll use my index finger to keep their eye on where everything is, and they just go right back in. That's pretty nice. I like that. Works for me.